What's up, Dragon Brood? In case y'all didn't know, I just did a video recently with Dev from Strictly Better MTG, and we covered a bunch of hot takes from the Magic community, and some of those were quite out there, but made for good discussion. However, at the end of that discussion, we ended up having like this extra 45-minute conversation about Arena and paper and how it involves the local game stores and things that could be done to make that better. And we didn't really want to lose that conversation, but we also didn't want to make a 2 hour video because the other one I think was already an hour. So this is the follow up to that discussion where we kind of went in and discussed a lot of different options and what could kind of make both sides of the economy and ecosystem just a little bit better. So I don't know if y'all like this type of stuff, let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow Dev as well if you're not over at SBMTG yet. And yeah, at the end of this, just let me know if you like these types of conversations because we might do more of them. But anyway, here's just a bonus video with some good conversation between two friends about Magic and the ecosystem. As people that if you play paper, you're rarely just going to quit playing paper to only play Arena, right? Like that's just not a thing. Will you spend some amount of money? No, like some percentage will, but we've already seen it over time. There's not a ton of people I know of that they enjoy their paper Magic. They will play both, or they mostly play Arena because it's convenient, or they have a night job and they can't go to their store and play, whatever. Right.
See, that's the segment.
But it's good for those people, right? You don't have a local store. Maybe you live in a country where there's not a lot of players, whatever the case is, right?
I was going to get there too. And like, there's just people who, one thing I think about Arena, this is kind of a weird point, but I think it matters a good bit, is that people used to kind of age out of Magic and they wouldn't, they'd stop getting in touch with their Magic friends as often, or they stop, buying as much product or whatever. And they'd eventually kind of either age out or because of the responsibilities of life, you get married, you have a kid, you have a house payment, a 40-hour-a-week job. And like people stop playing Magic so much. But I think Arena actually gives people an avenue to you don't have the disposable income that you had anymore. You don't have the, 16 hours a week to play Magic. Now you have 30 minutes a day to play Magic. And I think Arena is like really helps facilitate that for some people.
I don't think it's that player that got a reward from playing paper to go to Arena that magically just started playing Arena. You know what I mean?
No,
I don't think that's the case. But
that's a good point.
I think if more retailers saw a benefit of saying, hey, all right, I do want to promote Arena because it does send me some number of players through my front door. Even if they're just showing up to get the free thing or the promo or whatever it is you're giving them, it's at least getting somebody through your door so you get the opportunity to make the sale. And there's a lot of value in that.
I used to work at a Blockbuster Video, like around the time they were closing, like every store. And when we started closing up,
for those of you that don't understand, Blockbuster was a place where we used to have VHS tapes and then eventually DVDs. And then you would go there and you would have to have a membership card. So then you could check one of those out and you would take it home, usually for a couple of days, and then you bring it back and then you can get another one. It was like a movie checkout service. For those of you that don't know, for us old heads that are here.
It's so depressing. Like we're now old enough to where you have to explain Blockbuster to like 20% of the audience or more, probably more. But yeah, I worked at a video rental store as they were closing, and we had something else you'll probably have to explain to the kiddos at this point in history. But we had a red box at the gas station across from the street. It's a video rental box.
Those still exist. I've seen those every once in a while.
We still have a red at the same gas station. There is still a red box. And all of the old people, this is mostly old people, would come in and be like, because we put up now closing the store signs, and people would be like, oh, the red box killed you, did it? Is it the red box that killed you? It's like, no, the Netflix killed us. Netflix absolutely slaughtered Blockbuster. And I think that people had, at least in my hometown, a misconception about what actually happened there. And I think the same thing kind of happened with paper Magic. I think that, just like Redbox was part of it, the pandemic was kind of a huge part of what killed paper Magic, in-person Magic. There's fewer Commander games being played too. And
see, I don't think it's that. I think there's actually more Magic being played. It's just not competitive level Magic.
Competitive, right.
Which I think the biggest difference.
Right. But I think that one of the things that killed quote unquote standard more than the pandemic did, and honestly started killing it before the pandemic, was MTG Arena. I think that the fact that it's such an accessible way to play standard, maybe that's what, fewer and fewer FNMs fired.
See,
the moment that beta released, it wasn't necessarily all the pandemic.
I think it was actually a combination of other factors. I think for a long time, Magic players, and I've warned players about this multiple times in discussions, that they got too greedy. Because how many players you
I
see
think most people would agree with
talk about
that.
going to
Yeah.
their local stores and like, "Oh, I gotta get credit so I can go infinite and never spend anything on an entry fee or whatever." And then they were getting mad when stores like, "Well, you still have to pay the $5 entry fee, but you use your
Yeah.
credit on other stuff except for tournament entries." And they're like, "Oh, well, this is stupid, right?" Or, "Well, how come in the drafts I'm not getting enough that I get a free draft or whatever to be able to do the next thing,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah. Like I'm top 4 and I can't.
But
Yeah.
here's what happened. When the pandemic hit, stores started realizing that they don't even need all that tournament space because you were just a body heater giving off BTUs that they had to cool down and not spending
Well,
anything in the store.
I
Yet they
know
were
that
making more money when you weren't there. So when things open back up, a bunch of these retailers, they actually have less play space because they put more things in there they could sell because more people found them and they're making more to casual customers. I've seen it in a lot of places.
we are going to have to do an hour-long conversation about this on a podcast. We're going to
Sure,
have to because you and I, especially you having ran an LGS, I think we have very differing, although not necessarily opposing opinions. I think that we have somewhat differing opinions on this.
for sure.
So I don't want to go too
No, no,
deep
no.
into it, but I do think that people who come to your store 3 to 5 times a week and sit in your store are bringing a lot more value to a store than I've seen some owners think they are. Now, I know that you can't get by on drinks and snacks and stuff. I get that as a business owner, you can't do that. But again, I think that there's intangible value that not enough people are kind of factoring in to know that you have a player base that
I
visits your
think that's what
store,
everybody believed for a
you
long
know.
time, and I think that's why everybody concentrated on, "I gotta have the most play space. I gotta get the most
Yeah.
bodies," and whatever. But then you start realizing it costs more to run your AC. You need more employees to run tournaments, like,
I
and a
and
lot of
again,
those
I don't.
players, a lot of the competitive players were the ones spending the least because 'cause they're looking to get the best deal. They're
Right,
trying
they're looking
they're
at the infinite
Yeah,
draft.
they're
Right, I
trying to
get that.
just buy stuff online so they could just go to the PTQs or whatever, right? Like, that was the
Well,
situation for a lot of people, and I kept
and I
telling
know.
people, "This isn't gonna be sustainable." Remember how people were getting upset even when the prices for Grand Prix started going up?
Yeah,
And it was like, "Guys, these have been too cheap for too long. Y'all just didn't know."
yeah.
Right? Like, that's just the way it was.
It's like there's more outside of intangible,
Sure, sure.
just intangible value, but again, I do think those players bring a lot of value that maybe business owners don't always see. I also think talking about sustainability, I think a lot of LGS owners got the wrong idea around the pandemic. They started firing fewer and fewer FNMs. Their player base started leaving. There's no drafts during the pandemic, and maybe the way you've put it is that we realize we can make more when you're not in the store. And you've used things like, less AC and less,
Not
heating and
just that,
cooling,
it's
whatever.
the value of that particular customer, right?
Right.
A
And I
casual
understand there are
person
some.
coming in spends 10 to 1 what a competitive person
Right.
does.
I know that there are some. I've heard the term negative value attributed to some LGS customers. And I think that that's again short-sighted on the part of LGS owners. But again, I think that it's short-sighted to say that and again, I'm not like dogging your
Oh,
point or
sure, sure.
anything. I don't think that it takes everything into account. Let me say that. I don't think it takes everything into account to say like we learned during the pandemic that we made more money when you're not here, because I think that is obviously during the pandemic, card prices went
Sure.
nut through the roof. So like of course LGSs are making money hand over fist because the single sales they make, and they're making more single sales because people bought more cards during the
Yeah.
pandemic, like paradoxically. So of course, like your bottom line looks much better, and technically your overheads look better too because you're not spending as much money on heating,
Well, you're
electricity,
also not
all
staying
that
open
stuff.
till 2, 3 in the morning, finishing
Yeah, I was going to
tournaments,
say that too.
like,
Right, you're not firing as many events, so you're not there
yeah.
all night long running all of the utilities. So, again, it looks like your bottom line is massively affected. And I'm sure that it is on some level, but I think that a lot of people got the wrong idea because they were selling so much more volume during the pandemic through online sales. And not only the volume, but those sales, the cards
But I
went up 300% in some cases. So, like, of course
No,
you're
but my
making money,
argument to that, though,
you
is
know?
those same stores still have people in there, but now they're casual players, not those tournament players,
Right,
and, like,
right.
that's the problem. right?
Well,
If I think
would you
if
say go ahead.
I think if more, because even now I'm in retailer groups where they want to do more competitive things, but it's like, how do we do this profitably and have the people want to play? Right? That's the problem. Like, can we do stuff with a $20 entry fee, and what type of prizes do we have to have? Right? And people are like, well, I don't want to pay $20 for a weekly modern event or whatever. Right? I'll pay that if I'm going to an
Yeah.
RCQ, but I want to pay that for like a local thing. It's like, okay, well,
If people wanna play $5 to play standard on a Friday
but they
night,
also want
and they will not pay any more than that,
a
which is
prize
ludicrous.
that they feel is
Yeah.
worth the like 5 hours they're putting into it.
Yeah, a lot of,
Right?
players seem to think that the and this is a g I'm not saying they're
Hmm.
wrong for doing this, but players look at their time as an investment
Sure.
because it is.
Sure.
But, so people do seem to forget that, the business owner has to make
Oh,
money.
yeah. Like, I've literally
It's, you
seen
know
people complain when they're like, well, at the end of it, a store, I explained to them, well, you realize for that whole draft, the store really only profited like $25.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
$25 every week. I was like, yes, but that's $25 for the like 4 to 5 hours it took to deal with y'all.
yeah, like
Like,
LGS, Will used to say, well, I shouldn't even give his name, but the guy that kinda owns the LGS and has since time out of mind,
mhm.
here in my local area, one of the LGSs. He's, kind of pointed out that when an F&M fires with 8 people, like it often does around here just
Yeah.
before the pandemic, he makes $40. And we're in his store for like 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, sure, everyone buys multiple drinks and snacks, and like sometimes people buy singles or whatever, I'll buy a pack of this here and there. But for the most part, like he charges $5 for F&M entry fee. We barely fire it. That's $40, dude. Like that's not that much.
No.
Like it's like it goes back to your point that these events should have
Yeah.
cost
Also
more.
considering
So
they're not putting something else in those seats while you're there. Right?
yeah.
They're probably making sure they have
Yeah.
to have somebody dedicated to it, or making sure,
The
they have
the
to
amount of
interrupt dealing with
times,
other customers to go like start the next round and do whatever, or you have to have a judge available to make rulings on things, you
yeah.
know.
Usually have to give the judge at least
Yeah,
product,
something. So I mean that's what I'm
So
saying. Like even that comes out of that. Like
I
there's
will
a
say
lot of
the amount of
incremental
F and
costs.
M's that I've played while there was also a table full of people playing Warhammer is a lot.
Sure,
So
sure.
like you can do other stuff, but it kind of depends on how much floor space you have, and
Well,
not
yeah.
LG
Well,
never.
how big is the event
So
too? That's the other thing.
exactly, yeah, that too. Like as an LGS owner, or as someone who ran an
Hmm.
LGS, I should say, which is the most profitable of these events on average? Okay, 8 hours worth of an 8-person draft pod, so 8 hours of drafting. All right, an 8-hour F&M event where you fire 16 people, or an entire day's worth of commander, 8 hours of commander play. That doesn't cost anything. They don't rent tables. I actually
I
find
okay. I
table
would have
fee
to
to
say we have
be
to scale these
abhorrent.
differently, because like a 16-person event should not take you 8 hours. So we'll say like 5 hours.
Sometimes it does. But yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
like, and same thing with the draft. It should be like 4 to 5 hours. It shouldn't be eight
Yeah, you're
hours.
probably running 5 rounds,
Yeah, something
right?
like
So
that. Like, depending on, actually that depends on what your entry fee is for the events, I would say. I think if you were charging enough, you like, if you're trying to average like $7 a head, your constructed events could be worth a little more. However, generally speaking, in my experience, the casual group, even over 8 hours, probably is spending more money.
yep,
And mostly
yeah,
because they're walking in with list of like, I need every foil to foil that bling out my commander deck or whatever it
yeah,
is, right? Like,
yep.
and all right, well, there's $85 or whatever, like,
I was specifically interested in this answer because I thought you might answer this way. Because like ostensibly the drafters are spending a lot of money, and ostensibly the standard players are spending the fee to play the event, but the commander players are the only group that's technically not spending money unless you charge table fee, and I
mhm.
that's a whole other thing. But yeah, they're technically the only group that's not spending money, and I still thought they would spend the most money. And
Casual
like
players spend more than
here we
competitive
are.
players on everything. Like, I
But
don't,
you're right, competitive players are always trying to game down the amount
yeah,
of money they
I don't
spend.
know of
So
a, at least it's in the card game space. But I mean, maybe I'm thinking
yeah.
about like Warhammer and other things too. Like, yeah. I mean, like,
I imagine
casual players
competitive
probably
war.
do just spend more, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just
it's
always assume that competitive Warhammer players actually buy the figurines more than what I mean. Like
yeah,
I'm sure
but
you get store
what
credit for
they're
winning
doing
events
though
and
is they're
stuff.
buying specific ones, and again, a lot of times they're trying to, and to be fair to the players, I'm not saying it's wrong. but a lot of it is they're spending money on things that aren't product, right? The
Mm.
gas to go to events, the entry fees for these tournaments,
Oh, that's
food
true
while they're
too.
out. If it's a tournament or a convention somewhere, they're buying a plane ticket, right? Like
Yeah.
their money's going to other things. So
It's not
they're
like you as the vendor or the LGS owner gets any of
yeah,
that,
so they're
right?
trying
Yeah.
to save as much on the things where
Money
they
is
can because
right.
there's things like plane tickets and food or whatever they can't really save money on, right? That's just a sunk cost
Yeah.
to do the thing, to be competitive, to get the prizes, to get on the pro circuits or whatever. A casual player is just like, I want to bling out my deck. Like, I need these cards, and you have one right
What you
now.
got?
Awesome. Here's $10, right? And that's kind of the end of the exchange, right? Now, yes, they will still buy cards online and people will still go find deals. I'm not saying casual players don't ever go look for deals, but I'm saying on a one-to-one basis, if you were to make a retailer choose, it's probably going to be the more casual player.
Well, there's something about like what I hate doing is going on like TCG Player and finding like one of the shops that does free shipping after
Oh,
$5,
sure.
and then looking through their inventory and not finding everything I need and blah 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 blah. So there availability of certain cards is kind of an issue even when you have an online shopping, a
Yep.
place like TCG Player, Card Market or whatever. There are still sometimes availability issues, and there is really something to be said for being able to walk into a store and being like, "Hey, do you have these?" And even
Dude,
if they don't, most LGSs will be like, "We can get them for you."
dude,
You know what I mean? So,
convenience fee, if I'm in your store and I know the
mhm.
card online is $20, but you've got it in the shelf for 24, you can have them extra $4.
Yeah, I'm not waiting. I'm basically paying for you to ship me the card
Exactly.
today.
Now, I get it
Right.
if you're in your store and the card is $30 and you know you can get it online for $20. Like, okay, it's worth waiting
Maybe
the
hold
4 or
off,
5 days or whatever if you're buying 3 or 4
but
cards, right? That makes
I've
total
done that.
sense.
I've paid, a $2 or $3 premium on a card multiple times
Absolutely.
to just have it because,
But
if I wait for
again,
TCG Player, it'd be 2 weeks, you
over the
know?
years, especially when I was grinding PTQs and stuff, I met a lot of players that they would save every dollar. They reminded me of
Yeah,
those people who would
yeah.
like, you're gonna drive 5 extra miles or 10 extra miles to get to the gas station has gas 2 cents cheaper or whatever.
Right, it
Hey,
doesn't really make sense when you math it
yeah,
out,
they are
but,
those people though.
you
They would
know,
do that. And it's like, dude, you like to come here for FNMs. You like to come here when they run PTQs, whatever. Like, give them a couple dollars.
it's
Even when
like
I had my store, if I went to an event and it was held at somebody else's store, I would try to buy something. And I
yeah,
had people
something,
with me just going like, "Can't you just get that at, like, wholesale?" Like, dude, that's not the point. Like, they're giving up
Yeah.
their whole day and all their play space to let us play this PTQ here. The least I can do is spend an extra 5 or $10 because 'cause we're here. Like, it's not,
I mean,
you know
when it comes to big events that have multiple vendors like that too, it's just, remember that a vendor that has like 2 helpers, that guy had to buy like 3 plane tickets
Yep.
and a
Plane
hotel
tickets,
stay,
hotel,
and he's
probably
feeding his helpers
exactly.
every day.
Fed all those
Yeah, like
people. They have to have some money on hand to
booth
buy all the
rent, like
singles. They paid
yeah,
for the
like
booth. Like,
table fee for them is thousands of dollars. So like
yep.
like vendor, well, not every time, but like at big events,
Oh, yeah.
vendor table fees can be very, very, very expensive. So like if you see a guy with a couple of helpers, like he's got $10,000 wrapped up in this event, like buy a card from this guy. So, you know,
But, I think even coming back to the original point, I think it's how do you just make things interesting for both sides, right? Like, what is an interesting thing on Arena that appeals to card players? But then what's also an interesting thing to an Arena player that you can get them to go into a card store,
and this is
right?
something that like they'd have to sit and brainstorm on. And I'm sure they have. I'm sure that there's, a whole task force at Wizards designed that
Sure.
we got to get people on Arena to convert to paper. And I guarantee, again, they have the data and they want to get that number up, but just like I don't have a whole lot of like concrete suggestions because it is much harder to get people to come off the digital client and go to paper. It's like even if they didn't want to, like maybe LGSs are just too complicated in this day and age to work with. It's like you could do some sort of points or rewards program where if you spend so much money on, or if you spend so much time playing Arena, then maybe it's store credit towards like secret layers or like something else that you order directly from Wizards of
But
the
see, but I
Coast.
don't
But
think
I think
that
a lot of
solves the
people would be
problem
upset
though.
about. Hey, I don't
Yeah,
know that it
yeah,
does either, and I think a lot of people would kind of be rightfully upset
yeah.
that like, oh, you're just setting up your own distributorship program rather than
Basically.
helping LGSs. So I think there are issues with that program, but just some sort of credit for time spent on Arena or money spent on Arena would be nice, no matter how they do it.
Yeah, I think there's still ways. I think they just have to figure it out. I mean, there's still a lot of people playing paper. as evidenced by products still selling out and secret layers
Yeah.
still selling out or whatever.
Well,
It's like
yeah, I wonder how much of the spec community and the sort of the financial whales of the community are the ones selling out the
I
cards, because I
think
think financial speculation is
I
really
think
really
that's a
high
portion of
still.
it, but dude, you don't sell record numbers of, Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings being the
Oh yeah, Lord
best-selling
of the
set
Rings is
ever,
an
you know?
outlier,
Yeah.
but I definitely, your point is
But, like, the Warhammer
valid.
decks are in their 4th printing, I believe,
Yeah,
so,
they
like,
are.
there's no speculators, that's just people
People
just
love that
yeah,
Warhammer
there's
set,
people
but
just
and people
buying
love
them.
the Fallout set too. People are going
Yeah,
crazy over the
Fallout
Fallout
went
set.
fast
So,
too, and they're
yep,
having to go to another round on those, so that's not speculators, those are people just wanting stuff.
they like the product,
Yeah,
right? So,
and
as much as people fuss about secret layers, I do think that that kind of it goes back to what we're saying about gatekeeping and the lowest common denominator, like the dude said earlier. It's like I really think that when it comes to stuff like UB, it really does bring in a lot of new players, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. Like, if a guy sees there's a Universes Beyond Assassin's Creed coming out, I'm like, well, I don't really like Assassin's Creed, but if there's even one guy that's like, oh, I love Assassin's Creed, I'm gonna play some Magic now, like, that's
that
awesome.
is the one
There's nothing
product
wrong
I'm
with that.
saddest for because there's gonna be people who are excited about it, and they're gonna come into a field where I think it's going to be the least well-received product in probably the last year, year and a half.
Probably of the year, yeah,
Yeah, and
but
that's tough.
mm,
That's
yeah,
tough.
isn't it like a small UB
Yeah,
set,
it's
like
like
a
7 card packs and, like, it's a
yeah.
whole weird thing, like,
Nobody wants Aftermath.
yeah,
They
it's
screwed the pooch with Aftermath. I actually think Aftermath could have been a successful set. About 3 to 6 months before Aftermath came out, I did a video with like 5 predictions for that year. And one of them was a small set, like a 50 card, 100 card Magic the Gathering set. And I pitched the idea and said it could work as long as they do it right. And they just they murdered
the
the
only thing wrong
execution,
with it,
dude.
really, not as far as design, cards, whatever, that was all fine. It was just
Oh yeah, I think
distribution
the
of it.
cards in the set are good. Yeah,
I think it
absolutely.
should have been set up in either 2 to 4 commander decks of, like, between them, you get all the cards, right? Or some package of good guys, bad guys, these colors, whatever, but you just buy them and you get the 50 cards, 25 cards here, 25 cards here, whatever,
Yeah. With
right?
some kind of theming.
Yeah, like, that would have been the way to go. I think as it is, nobody wanted to buy collector's boosters where 35% or more are just gonna be repeats,
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's the other problem with a small set is that you can't, once people open their third or fourth pack, they're already seeing
yeah, nobody
repeats.
wanted
And
like, when you go to
yeah,
it had I think it even had bundles, and it's like, okay, you're getting bundles with 10 packs, but, like, you're gonna be seeing the same cards after, like, the 4th pack.
yeah.
So it's like
And I mean, I will say though, when I open a booster box of a stip of typical standard set, I wish I got more repeats. You know what I mean?
sure,
Like
but
you
the
just
set
get
is
like
also much larger. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is true, right? But I mean, I'm opening more cards because I feel like the aftermath packs were like half the size of a normal pack or something.
But the problem is
Um,
when you open literally 3 and 4 of everything, like, it's
yeah.
not a great experience.
Yeah, it's like I want a play set, but I kinda don't, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It depends on what we're talking about, but
But, yeah, I think there's
I
a
don't
lot of
know.
ways. I think we're in and it's weird too because, like, we're trying to solve for a thing that may ultimately not need to be solved.
Yeah,
At the end of it is a lot of people might enjoy playing arena, a lot of people still enjoy playing paper, and maybe those streams just don't cross very heavily.
don't have to cross,
Yeah,
right,
I
but
I don't
I just think
know.
especially, like, if you're Wizards of the Coast, like, somewhere in the C-suite, there's a guy who is, like, going out of his mind trying to figure out, like, how to get this conversion rate up, you know what I
Yeah, and
mean?
it just may
That's just
not
how
matter.
businesses work.
At the end of
Yeah.
it, it just might not matter. If
Mm.
you get to the end of the year and the numbers go up on both, and your retailers are making money and distributors are making money and card
If
just still worth
everybody's
stuff,
making money,
yeah, like
and the players are enjoying the product, which is kind of the but you can gauge whether or not the players enjoy the product by how much of it you sell technically. That's usually the metric, right?
yeah.
So, and they've been selling a lot of it lately. So,
So yeah, it's a crazy one.